I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
The more you talk, the harder I want to hit you.
I'm happy because of being here today. Fuck you.
Come on, you want me to drive? No, you're supposed to be suicidal, remember? I'll
Anybody
drive.
a drive?
Get in the car.
Fucking shit. Fuck me in the fucking ass. Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt.
Hey everyone, it's Donji Corleone here, and I am here with a brand new rant. And this rant is going to be for one of 3 adaptations of this cartoon series. And this was when Sony had rights to these characters. And this is going to be for 2011's Roger Gosnell's The Smurfs. One of adaptations when they tried to adapt these guys to the big screen. And this was a film that, well, let's face it, I think Sony Animation was kind of a laughingstock for, well, yeah, the Emoji Movie was bad, but that was bound to be bad to begin with because it was bad as soon as it was announced. This made them a laughingstock to the animation people for a while, and well, let's face it, also, especially this one critic who had a habit of unnecessarily ripping them apart and using some wrongful criticisms for them, especially with one of their films. More. But that's the thing. Roger Gosnell, is Roger Gosnell even a good director to begin with? Fine, well, the Scooby-Doo films, you know, are fun, guilty pleasures. The ones he directed, they're guilty pleasures. They're enjoyable, you know? They're films I've grown to love. Like Monsters Unleashed, I always loved. I've grown a soft spot for the first one. But Monsters Unleashed I enjoy. That's probably his best film. No, I've always liked Monsters Unleashed. But Home Alone 3 is trash. Yours, Mine, and Ours. The 2005 with Dennis Quaid is trash. And this. So what's the plot of this movie? So this basically goes the plot of cartoon characters go into the real world. Back when it was trying to be stuff like Garfield or Alvin and the Chipmunks, this was Sony's attempt at those. And I'm surprised Sony Animation was even involved in this, because this feels like something Abby Madison would probably make. But the plot is Gargamel chases the Smurfs out of their village because Clumsy leads them there, and they tumble from their world and into New York. Yeah, New York, apparently. Instead of ending up in a modern world Belgium, they end up in fucking New York. So they're stuck in the Big Apple, and they have to find a way back to their village before Gargamel tracks them down. So that's my reaction. Yes, I did watch the cartoons as a child, but I never found these guys ever work for movies at all. You want to know why? Now, this film does prove it well. For a while this was, until a certain other film from 2025 came out and made them even more fucking annoying than this did. Like, I'm surprised Sony Animation actually seemed like they were fine making this. Instead of just having they did make a completely animated film, but instead of just, in 2017, but instead of just making that to begin with, they decided to go this route. Just why? This came after they did stuff like Surf's Up and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which were films people liked. Then the same studio that would make the Spider-Verse eventually. This does not feel like a movie made by them. Like I said, this feels like a movie Happy Madison Productions would have probably made. Or Sony themselves without Sony Animation would have made. They clearly only got Sony Animation involved just for the Smurfs, just to make the Smurfs characters. Now, okay, this rant won't be as extreme as many worse live-action adaptations because it's not as bad as maybe some other certain atrocities. Like, I think Garfield's worse than this. I think the sequel is worse than this. The Alvin and Chipmunks films, like, the sequels to Alvin and Chipmunks, I think are even worse than this. And, well, the 2025 film already looks worse. And I haven't seen that yet, but I've heard it's actually a lot worse than any of Sony's stuff was. So, I guess I'd watch this over the Paramount one from last year. So, how was this made? So, Jordan Kerner, the producer of crap like Snow Dogs, but also producer of George of the Jungle, was 5 years negotiating and he bought the rights to the Smurfs in 2002. And originally it was going to be made by Paramount and Nickelodeon, but then Sony and Columbia Pictures obtained the rights in 2008. And it had a budget of $110 million, and it began in March 2010 in New York City. Then after the film was officially shot and completed, the Smurfs would premiere at Jizz Car on June 16, 2011, and was released by Sony on July 29th, 2011. And while this got negative reviews, apparently made like $563 million worldwide, and for a while was their highest grossing film until it crossed the Spider-Verse in 2023. And the rest is all history from there. Alright, so here are the bad qualities and the stories of the Smurfs. So, I guess this is not a bad quality per se, but the one good quality I will say, I guess the one watchable part of the movie is Hank Azaria as Gargamel. I think Hank Azaria does a good job playing Gargamel, and actually does sound very much like the cartoon counterpart of him. I will say that. He actually sounds like the cartoon Gargamel, and actually acts like the cartoon Gargamel. And now I did not go see this in 3D back when this came out, but I guess the 3D would have looked nice, I guess. It would have made for a bad film, I guess. I guess they have some decent 3D here. Like, this was back when 3D was a thing, and you could tell there's some 3D bits. Because this is back when 3D was a thing, guys. Back when every movie was in 3D. And, centering a Smurfs film around them, escaping from Gargamel, and coming across a portal that was apparently they knew nothing about until then. And they go into this portal while Clumsy ends up going to this portal, and and 5 of them follow him there. And they only use it to escape Gargamel and Asriel, and they stumble upon New York. Instead of like being in modern day Belgium, because the Smurfs are from Belgium, they end up in fucking New York. Not Belgium. The Smurfs are Belgium characters, so why can't it just be Belgium? Just modern day Belgium. You know, wouldn't it make more sense? And I have to find a way back home, and they have to enlist the help of Neil Patrick Harris, who has the subplot of him expecting a child with Gemma Mays and trying not to get fired by Sofia Vergara from his cosmetics job. It's basically just sloppy writing through, especially in the ending. Like, you could have ended easily by having just all the live-action characters handle all the work, but then we would have had a so-called Smurfs final battle climax being the center of it right there, so it's another example where everything just gets made to exist in movies like Garfield, Ralph and the Chipmunks, where here, like, none of the Smurfs had lost their substance that actually made people like that cartoon series and make a shitty film. I mean, the sequel's worse, but this is still a bad film, alright? It's still terrible. How do we start off the film? So, we start off with the Smurf characters are preparing this festival called the Blue Moon. They're going around the whole village, and Clumsy's trying to get to rehearsals, but two of them, one of them is played by Alan Cumming. Yeah, like, being a son of the mask wasn't bad enough, and then they waste him in this, apparently. And Grouchy, played by George Lopez, who was a miscast for the role, does not sound like the part at all. They don't allow him in. And so when he leaves, like, especially after Brainy basically tries to forcefully reveal the reasons, and a trademark gets kicked into the rehearsing Smurfs. He tries to, meanwhile, then it cuts to Papa seeing this vision of Clumsy reaching for a wand and failing, and his first being captured. And when Clumsy comes to his lab, is trying to look for some first aid stuff, but Papa doesn't let him, so Clumsy sneaks out of the village to go pick the first aid ingredients. But Gargamel, who had left his house earlier to go find the village, he sees Clumsy and chases after Clumsy and ends up in the village. And it turns out the reason why he couldn't find the village is because apparently it's guarded by an invisible shield, which was never a thing in the cartoon. They never had an invisible shield. It was never invisible. So why wasn't it invisible in the cartoon in the first place? If it's invisible here, it makes really no sense. But he ends up finding the invisible shield and destroys the village and chases them out of it. But while Clumsy's fleeing, he runs to the Forbidden Falls. And so some 4 others, Brainy, Gutsy, Grouchy, Smurfette, they follow him there. And then, of course, the Blue Moon appears, and it creates the portal that sends them to New York. So they can, just before Gargamel catches up to them. It's pretty much is how the film starts off. Right there. So the first bits with Gargamel are kind of funny when he's using puppets of Papa and Smurfettes and pretty much having Azrael scratch at them, and him and Azrael are often arguing with each other about his obsession with the Smurfs and what he needs them for to harness their essence. And then both having this laugh rival, and he's like, "But you're nicking it, don't nick it." And then when he tries to get them out of their house, Azrael lands on his face like, "God, Azrael, you're a boy?" And blows up his roof to go after them. And when he arrives to that village, he throws his cat Azrael through that portal. And Azrael, are you dead? Like, this is like the one best part of the film. You know, I kind of wish the film was about... I really wish the film should have just been about Hank's Gargamel instead. So honestly, it's like pretty much the one thing that actually makes the film somewhat watchable. And honestly, rooting for his character the whole film. And so, yeah, but it's like the closest thing you get to an actually good part of the film. So, back then, why would Hollywood think that because they're making some film adaptation for children, they can't forego quality and take the stance because apparently the audience think they'd have no effort to keep them entertained right there, or just do whatever they could. And back then they wanted to cash in on cartoon characters entering the real world when that was barely ever a good concept with show characters to begin with. And literally, almost every single line the Smurfs say has Smurf in it. Literally anything they say has the word Smurf. And we're even using it as an insult, or during a joke, or replacing a generic word, or referencing a pop culture reference. But yeah, at one point, because of who Smurfette's voice actress is, literally references one of her voice actress's songs in one of her quotes. Apparently. Because, yeah, get it, people. Get it because of who she's voiced by. Get the reference. Like, it doesn't offer much with this story at all. It's just a human average going through terrible periods of life, gets greeted by her annoying Smurf characters. You know where the story's gonna go. He doesn't like them at first, and then he warms up to them, but then he gets mad at them, and then he realizes his errors, and then goes back and helps them. The end. The story presented is so unoriginal. It's predictable from top to bottom. It doesn't offer anything good for the audience. It doesn't help that the film just feels so dated and out of touch, trying to be forcefully happy and a bunch of bland product placement. And it's evident through the humor. And may not be all bad, because like some of the gags with Gargamel are funny, but the rest of the comedy when it's not Gargamel falls flat on its face. With the dull pop culture references and the ineffective slapstick. Like the Smurf characters themselves, maybe save for Clumsy, are just annoying as shit the whole film. Yeah, maybe not as annoying as the 2025 counterparts already are, but they're still annoying in this film too. They're not any more tolerable. And the animation doesn't even make things better. Maybe it looks fine for if it was its own thing. It's just a simple animated film, but it doesn't look appealing, and the designs look fucking ugly. Look fucking butt ugly. Yeah, because they're live action, but they don't even try to put effort in these guys. Like here, they just look like they're nightmare fuel. They look like fucking Polar Express. To the point where they just look like the kind of Smurfs that would probably appear public fucking domain. They look like if that was the case. That's what they look like. Just look like monstrosities, because back then every cartoon character, when this came out, had to look like an ugly monstrosity. This was around the time this trend was starting to die out. Thankfully, but it was still pretty, this did not stop it from still being a box office hit. So, after Azrael chased him up a tree, though Clumsy ends up in one of NPH's boxes, who is actually, meanwhile, we meet NPH's character around this time, and he's working for a makeup company, and then this boss, played by Sofia Vergara, promotes him to new vice president after apparently firing the last one, because apparently the last one's marketing was lame, and tells him he has 7 days to make up a new campaign where he's going to be fired. 2 days, or he's going to be fired. So, after Azrael chases the Smurfs up a tree, gets a bit of Smurf's hair, Clumsy gets chased by Azrael into one of NPH work boxes, and then ends up in the cabin, so the Smurfs go find him. And so they ride on the roof of the cab, and then it's clearly just a montage of getting a bunch of shots of New York, and because they're not familiar with New York, they think like this Elmo and Statue of Liberty cosplayers are goblins and trolls. They think this artist on the billboard's a princess or something. Because they're not from New York, they're from the old medieval times. And now, there's a not bad Vampire Weekend song playing in the background for the scene, which I guess is not a bad choice for the scene, but just clearly an excuse to show off all the advertisings they're trying to force in and product placements and stuff. And so they end up at NPH and John Mace's apartments. And after they meet them, they attack NPH, where they pretty much mess around their house. And Clumsy gets chased by their dog into the bathroom. And Clumsy thinks this soap is actually eatable because it's berry flavored. And well, Smurf berries are their food, so he thinks the soap is berry flavored food, and tries to eat it, but burps out a bubble and ends up in the toilet, stuck in a bunch of toilet paper. And then this is where they meet them, and they explain their situation. The Winslows, though NPH is reluctant to befriend them, do befriend them, and they give them, shelter. And then, of course, the next day, they literally sing their stupid theme song for 3 minutes in their kitchen, and they don't shut up. And they're basically messing around in NPH's place. And of course, you get this annoying, cringy reference to Google, because NPH is Googling their whereabouts and origins. And when he tells them he's using Google, they're like, ooh, Google. Just shut up. Hell. And so apparently they realize they need some stargazer, aka a telescope, to be able to find a perfect way to get back. And so the Smurfs, though, they refuse to let Clumsy join them, minus him, because they don't let him join them. They follow Patrick all the way to his workplace, and because they think he's some fortune teller, thinks he has a stargazer, but he doesn't. And so basically how they resort to thinking they'll get the stargazer is they keep trying to sing their song so loud to annoy the piss out of him to get their telescope. And then basically mess around and trash his office and distract him from getting his job done, despite the fact that if he doesn't get a campaign, he'll get fired. So basically, these guys are really not making life better for NPH's character. They're already making his life hell. They're almost costing him his job, basically. All because he doesn't thinking he still has some stargazer, despite the fact he literally yells at them that, I don't have a stargazer. It's something people in this century just don't have. Yeah, so they resort to that stuff because they still think he has it. Despite the fact he told them millions of times no. Like, how stupid are these guys? And then of course, he has to call his wife to pick them up because they keep distracting him from getting any work done, and they won't leave him alone. And so, meanwhile, as we get to Garmel, he pretty much then sees that Osriel caught a bit of Smurfette's hair, and so he wants to harness essence from it. And so he finds this porta potty. At first, he thinks that, but when he thinks it's a cauldron with dead stuff in there. But even though it's a porta potty area, he leaves, grossed out by it, and so then he ends up at Belvedere Castle for his lair. And then, of course, after he harnesses a bit of that, he then goes out looking for them. And then he wanders into MPH's workplace. And then, of course, when he sees Sofia Vergara's character testing some little product stuff out on her mother for the press, Garmel walks up like, she looks like an ugly dogfish, insults her, which I will admit this was a bit of a funny bit because, well, Garmel getting used to New York was actually a pretty funny bit where he sees people talking on their Bluetooth headphones, and first he thinks well, because one of them mentions this person named Lily, and then sees another one walking by. It's like, are you kidding? She's like the hottest girl in my department. Please, young woodsman, what does this whole Lily have to do with the finding of Smurfs? But the other guy thinks he's like obviously on drugs, thinks he's a homeless person, so he's like, take your meds, man. Which that got a laugh out of me, I'll admit that. Then Garmel sees this other crazy hobo walking around, and he asks if he's seen him. He's like, because he's clearly on drugs, like, they're everywhere. That's where he ends up in the workplace. And like, Garmel's reaction is kind of perfect. Is everyone in this town completely insane? Like, that's why I say it's the best part of the film. I kind of wish the film was about him instead of the Smurfs. Because, his part of New York was actually a little more interesting. And, I felt more invested in his character. Really. And because of how annoying these Smurf characters are, I kind of wish he won. I kind of wish he kills them in this version. And, of course, that's when he gets to meet Sofia Vergara and insults her elderly mother right there. And, of course, because Sofia Vergara's boss, Sofia Vergara thinks it's some random person that just broke in. Like, escort this lunatic out right now. But before he can be kicked out by security, he decides to use the Smurf essence on her elderly mom. And of course, then, at first, so they offer to get him anything, and so they think he'll be able to help with the whole marketing thing. And so, with this idea, is he wants them to give him this army to help, this army of other critters to help him find the Smurfs, but they obviously don't know what the Smurfs are, so they think he's thinking of ideas for their marketing campaign. It kind of seems like, at first, they're going to probably join, or going to probably ally him for a little bit, but after this scene, it feels like a wasted scene, because they don't ever see him again after after the failed Schwartz bit. He then leaves them, and they don't ever interact with them again, but, it's some bit of other funny gig where Osriel keeps trying to get at his food, and he keeps chucking him off, and then keeps climbing back up to get at his food, and then chucks him back off 3 times, which was also a pretty funny gag. And then after that, right there, when John Mays is trying to take them back home, then Gutsy, Alan Cummings' Smurf character, sees a Stargazer picture on the failed Schwartz sign. They run in to find it, and then you get this other random bit where they're at fail Schwartz, where Grouchy ends up landing in a bowl of M&Ms, meets the peanut M&M plush, and thinks it's a real thing, and falls in love with it. Smurf, on the other hand, sees plush unicorns and think they're the real unicorns, and think that's where they went, and sees all the Alexander dolls and thinks it's a dress store. And of course, when Clumsy's trying to climb up the escalator, the kids see him and they think he's a toy. And so they try each of them try finding where their parents to buy it, but the clerk has never seen it. And then Clumsy frightens them by basically revealing that he's not a toy. Like, hey, keep your Smurfs to yourselves. And don't you have boundaries? I'm not a toy. And then runs to MPH when And when one little girl's like, hey, that's mine, sorry to stop. But then this little girl basically kicks NPH in the leg. Right there, and so Brainy, Gutsy, and Papa get this manage to find the Stargazer, but Gargamel steals a leaf blower from another dude because he's out of essence, and so he thinks the leaf blower's a wand, and so he steals it off screen. And he captures Grouchy and Gutsy and Brainy, but though MPH manages to foil that and pretty much causes the leaf blower to send Gargamel flying back outside the shop where he's arrested for stealing the leaf blower and sent to jail and causing havoc in the store. And so then of course though, while he's in jail that night, he sees this moth and it's a parody reference to Lord of the Rings where he tells the moth, bring back an army of eagles. And pretty much the next day, the moth comes back to rescue him just as he's about to get the soap dropped on by prisoners. Or get beat up by prisoners, basically. And of course, but it turns out, because he said fly, it comes with a swarm of flies. Like, flies? And so the flies help him escape. And so he goes back to the castle, the Belvedere Castle. Meanwhile, Papa uses the toy telescope to calculate the night he and his others can return home, but no, he needs to work out a spell first. And then while the other Smurfs are waiting, then you get a random Guitar Hero reference. Which, by the way, this was around the time Guitar Hero was dying out. Right there, so we now have to have a random guitar reference where they're fucking rapping to Walk This Way by Jimi Hendrix. And using their own theme song in it. And it's a horror. And this is such a cringy, unfunny fucking moment. Right there, like, this is not the stuff I cared about. And I don't give a shit about Guitar Hero. Like, this is the subplot I don't really care about. The main plot I don't care about. The stuff with Gargamel I care about. Right there, I'll just get more into that later. So, like, easily there. Then, of course, eventually, while they're fucking around with Guitar Hero and stuff, it turns out Sofia Vergara had apparently approved of MPH's marketing campaign, but he'd also made a separate one with a blue moon. And then, of course, then Clumsy, while celebrating, accidentally slips onto MPH's computer and swaps it with the blue moon one in a pretty forced scene. Which literally, even the cartoon Clumsy could probably figure this out and probably would have walked off of there immediately. But MPH doesn't even bother to look at the email and see the swaparoo and just sends it anyway, because he's that much of an idiot. To even try to look in the email first, maybe double check the email before you even send it. So this next bit's kind of his fault, as partially, for not even trying to double check the email to make sure it's the right one. And so the next day he sees this. And he realizes that Clumsy almost cost him his job, and he storms off on them in a third act breakup bit. And he even yells he didn't want any little people in his house, but because Johnny Mason's character is pregnant, thinks that's referring to any babies, but he tries to clarify it's little blue, and him and his wife argue, and clearly she takes the side of the Smurfs more than MPH's character instead. Just why would you? Like, why? Like, seriously, instead of side with your husband that's probably trying to keep you guys living in your house, trying to work hard so you guys can have a living, still be able to have your child, you side with the Smurfs that have honestly caused your husband hell the entire time and kept bothering him. But then the Smurfs, they leave Clumsy at home again, and they visit this bookstore, and they find a book of themselves. But apparently it has a spell that could turn the moon blue, but Gargamel has managed to find them there, because the same hobo we encountered earlier told him he saw them walk into the bookstore, and he finds a dragon wand, the same wand from Papa's vision, and he transfers the remaining magic in it. And of course, then he's able to capture Papa, and well, Papa sends the others on their way to stay behind to be captured, basically. Like, as soon as the Smurfs meet MPH's character, they fuck with his house, they play with his stuff, they stalk him to work, demanding a telescope, and when he tells them no, they keep harassing him for it, despite the fact he tells them no a gazillion fucking times. And they keep bugging him at his job and almost get him fired multiple times. Like, at this point, you want Garmel to win because, you know, that's the thing. Like, Garmel also feels more like a hero in this than any of these Smurf characters do. In this version. Right here. These guys just come off as more nuisance. Well, maybe except for Clumsy and Papa Smurf, but the rest of them all come off as nuisances. And basically even cause havoc in Fail Schwartz. Because we need to have Fail Schwartz in a film. Because this is set in New York. Like, Clumsy and Papa are like the only tolerable ones of the six. Because for one, I do like the late Anton Yelchin. May Anton Yelchin rest in peace. And, you know, it's really tragic and sad that he got robbed from us at 25. Like, basically when he went to get his mail, unfortunately he lived down a hill, and unfortunately this truck rolled down and it crushed him at his mailbox just as he got his mail. This was back in 26, like nearly 10 years ago. Sadly. Like at 25, like the guy seemed like he had a bright future ahead of him, and it got robbed from him way too fast. And unfairly. And it really does kind of match Clumsy's childlike innocence in the character. And this version, and honestly, this version of him kind of gets treated like shit. Despite the fact in the cartoon, while they apparently did get annoyed with him, he was never really excluded from anything. Because, well, they still accepted him as part of the family, you know. They were not that much assholes to him. They literally keep him away from almost half the entire quest. The only reason he ends up in the scope quest is because, well, John Mace has to pick them up because they keep harassing MPH at his job. And the book quest also, because of some vision that even the vision tries to single out Clumsy as the one dooming everybody, despite the fact that's not even how it's going to go. And like... And for like the worst part, the writers basically try to have Clumsy forcefully fuck over MPH's promotion ad for his job by tripping over his computer and clicking on a Blue Moon ad he made separately. Although to be fair, it's kind of partially MPH's character's fault by not even double checking the email first. You know, how about double check, you know, oh, I don't know. Make sure that it's the right one. You know, you think he would actually look, any smart person would look and make sure it was the right one before sending it, just to make sure they don't fuck up, you know? So it's kind of partially your fault too for not looking right away. So how are you not shocked? How about this is why you double check. There's a thing called double checking to be safe. Even I do that when I edit my videos. Like, sometimes I want to make sure I'm actually... Whenever I edit my videos, I actually want to make sure I don't make some forceful errors. You know? And to be fair, though, this Blue Moon ad seems like it feels more effective for a cosmetic company than the real one he was going to really send. And you know what's just going to end up being the case in the end. And these characters just aren't that great. Like, except for Gargamel, the rest of the human characters are uninteresting and add little to nothing to the main story. Tim Gunn is just there to make a paycheck. And you do nothing with his character. Sofia Vergara also feels like she's just there for a paycheck. The Smurfs themselves are one-dimensional and just exist to make the film marketable. Clumsy, the one tolerable one, ends up being the unexpected hero. Papa, the only other tolerable one, is the far figure. Smurfette does nothing to the plot, is there to be there. Brainy, Grouchy, Gutsy are just there to be comic reliefs. And like, Gargamel's like the villain of the film, but he's the most tolerable character in the movie. Like, there's just something that's actually admirable and exciting, and has an enjoyable over-the-top attitude of getting the Smurfs, and the funny moments in the film are all purely him. None of the funny moments are from any of the Smurf characters. The majority of the stuff that's actually funny is from his character only, really. It's another strength the movie benefits from. Like, the character... Like, that's the thing. That sadly, like, some of these actors are actually talented. Like, NPH is pretty talented. Sofia Vergara's not bad in other stuff. Right there. And they basically waste them in this. The majority of the voice cast, I guess, is also great. Like Alan Cumming, the late Anton Yelchin, George Lopez, and at least they have the late Jonathan Winters, who may also rest in peace. Because he died around 2013, is actually one of the voice actors from the old cartoon show. And there's too much chaotic slapstick. There's embarrassing Smurf rap music and the stupid Guitar Hero bits. Unsuccessful attempts trying to force an emotion, like Clumsy being rejected, or the baby story with Jima Maze's character that really goes nowhere. And the drama's not really that important. When they try to include with the main character's job struggles, or Pop being caught by Gargamel. And that's another thing. When Papa decides to sacrifice himself to Gargamel, it's pointless. Because Papa, you could just escape with them. You don't have to stay behind to get captured. It's a pointless sacrifice. And it's a pretty much stupid one too, because Papa getting himself captured, he could just use her essence to open portals to the Smurf world, so your sacrifice would have been shitty and all for nothing. And honestly, there's a bit where Papa's like, "There's Smurfs are my family. You never give up on family." Guess what? That's what you did. In that whole scene. So you're a fucking hypocrite. You just gave up on them. That's what you did in the end anyway. Just leave with them. But no, the movie thinks we need to have forced drama on these Smurf characters you don't care about. So now we get on with the finale. So when they get back, so they can go retrieve Clumsy before going home. But Clumsy manages to rile them to rescue Papa, and so them and NPH, who just got back, having a change of hearts randomly, because the reason why NPH has a change of heart all of a sudden is because he sees some kid learning to walk in the middle of the street. That's why. And sees a picture of first baby. That's his change of heart. So he goes back and right there, not caring about his job anymore, but despite the fact he probably should. So they and Patrick go to Belvedere Castle, and Gargamel increases Juan's power of Papa's essence, and so Brainy is able to turn the moon blue and open a portal to their world. And off screen, he gets all the Smurfs, the Smurf village, to face off Gargamel, and so they face off Gargamel, but he manages to steal the wand. No, he manages to actually get the upper hand and captures quite a few of them. The Smurfette's able to free Papa, defeat Azrael. Right there, but then of course, Gargamel realizes Papa's free, then tries to throw him in the air, but NPH saves him. Before Gargamel can kill both of them. Gutsy steals the wand, but drops it. Clumsy, though, it looks like the Vision. He catches it, and he saves the day. You know that's gonna happen. And he sends Gargamel flying away by accident. And gets hit by a bus, and somehow doesn't die from this. And so they hail Clumsy as a hero. Papa admits he was wrong, and they bid the Linzels farewell, and they go home. And it turns out Sofia Vergara saw the blue moon, and so NPH is not fired, and he gets to keep his job, and they go home. The end. And then the credits, they have their baby, and the Smurfs rebuild their village in New York. And somehow there's a credit scene that apparently shows Gargamel got his wand back, despite that apparently Papa broke it and threw it in the river. So how the hell did he find it? Did he just randomly get free from the bus? Did he magically seem to know that it was in the water the whole time? Did he dive in there and find it and manage to repair it? You don't fucking know. And how is this possible? This was clearly done so they could make their shitty sequel in 2 years, and that turned out to be a thing because this made over $500 million worldwide when it came out, so they did a sequel. And what's sadder is that despite Cowboys and Aliens opening at #1, this ended up making them more money than that film. And you know what? I'm gonna say this. I think Cowboys and Aliens is underrated. And that film was way better than this. That was probably one of the last few great Steven Spielberg... No. It's Steven Spielberg directed. He's like a producer. But that was probably one of the last few great Harrison Ford movies. That's probably Harrison Ford's last great movie he did that was worth a shit. And it's like... Yeah, I wish that movie had this movie's box office instead. Alright, so now do I have any good qualities of the film? Yeah, sure. I mean, the reason why it's not as bad as the second film is because the number one tolerable thing, Hank Azaria makes the film tolerable. Literally the one actor of the film that sounds like he's having the most fun in the role, though apparently I think he hated playing the character from what I heard. And if that's the case, I don't blame him, honestly, because if I had to star in a film like this, despite actually playing my character well, I probably would hate being a shitty reboot of a cartoon series as well. I guess some of the voice acting is good. And the scene with Papa and Neil Patrick Harris on the balcony is kind of decent. And that's something the film was missing. That's what we were missing. More scenes like that to actually make the Smurfs more tolerable. More scenes like this. You want to know what movie did do that right? They actually did that right in a movie called this, with Sonic and James Marsden's character. They actually did that. They actually gave them more scenes better, and they didn't have Sonic force in pop culture references. You know why? That's why. They actually did that right. That's something this film couldn't even do right. Some of the songs in the film, I guess, are kind of cool. But other than those, this is still an awful movie. And it should have its essence boiled in the cauldron along with the second film that I will do a rant on eventually. So in the end, you can definitely avoid this if you're a fan of Smurfs, or just a Sony Animation fan in general, because it's definitely one of their worst works yet. Anyways, that's it for my rant on the Smurfs 2011. If we're going to rate the Smurfs 2011, here's how I'm going to rate this movie. So overall, if you're a fan of Sony Animation, or even a fan of the old cartoon, just avoid this like the plague, because this was one of them at their worst before 2025, that is. And if we're going to rate the Smurfs 2011, I'm going to give the Smurfs 2011 a 4 out of 10. Alright, there we go, guys. That officially wraps up my rant for the Smurfs 2011. And until then, guys, that will be it for this rant. Thank you all for watching. And if you like this, want to see more, then don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.